You're trying to affect change for the positive, right? You're trying to help that bottom line. You're trying to get more money for your employees. All those things take time and effort. That doesn't happen overnight. So you're going to have a positive push, and you're going to have to say it a lot, and you're going to have that repetition happen for 3 to 4 weeks before it's really going to take. Hello. How's everybody doing on this beautiful day? You know, it's kind of funny. Every day has been a bluebird day here in San Diego, California. I know jealousy is high. We haven't had any rain, believe it or not. Normally I shut my sprinklers off around Halloween. I turn them back on around May, but man, not one rain, just bluebird skies all the way through January here. It's kind of surprising. So at this point, we're kind of hoping for a little bit of rain. It's very rare for San Diegans to say that, but yeah, we could use a little bit of rain. All right, tales from the road. Was at a signage company last week, 2 weeks ago, doing some consulting, and I want to talk about what happened. I got on site, and the owner had briefly told me, and I've done consulting for him before, so it's kind of normal for us to play a little loose and fast here. And he said, just come on board. I need some help launching this new policy in my company. And I said, okay, no problem. I said, you want to tell it to him? He goes, nah. He goes, you're going to be here in a couple hours. Why don't you just sit in and I'll talk with the team and you can hear at the same time, and away we go. I said, yep, easy. We can figure this out. Sit down in the meeting. He sits down with all of his team and he goes, all right, here's the new policy. And he outlines it. And that's a way that they're handling customers and how they're coming in the door and what they want out of that customer before they're going to give them a price. And it's a lot of basic stuff. But here's the part that just had my mouth on the floor. He's the owner. He's not in the day-to-day. He has a president. He has a vice president. He has a production manager that is going to be carrying out his wishes and his commands. And in front of the entire team, the president was raising his hand and asking questions to the owner. How does that give you any sort of good vibes or feeling that this is an organized machine? As I'm watching the president ask questions, I pulled that person aside and I said, hey, were you aware of this policy change before I got here? He goes, no, I'm hearing this for the first time. I was shocked. I was literally dumbfounded. Like, how is this even possible? And so I'm going to talk about a little bit of the ramifications of what happened on this horrific day inside of the sign company. And then I want to tell you about what steps are going to be there. Changing policy is normal. You actually should be changing policy quite often. It's kind of what we talked about in the last couple of weeks. We were talking about, hey, purge what you don't need. Let's, dive down to what we really need to be a part of. And what I mean by that is if you have a policy that is time consuming and it doesn't add value, then you really shouldn't have it inside your four walls. And so his policy was a good thought process. It was something that could happen from the way they do the intake of the customers, the 9 questions they want to ask the customer every single time. All of that part of the policy was great. But his delivery and his lack of giving the knowledge to the middle managers blew my mind. So this is what happened. President starts asking questions to the owner. Owner starts not thinking the thought process all the way through. So now he starts throwing knee-jerk reaction question or answers out there to the questions the president had. All the employees are super confused because even the president doesn't know what's going on. The vice president started asking questions. The production manager starts asking questions. The middle manager asking questions on how they are going to make this policy happen. None of the employees are asking one question. Well, it's because the employees see that their leaders aren't on the same page. That's like the same thing what happened when you were a little kid. When mom and dad were on opposite ends and mom's like, no candy before dinner. So you run to dad and go, hey, can I have a good piece of candy? And the dad's like, sure. And now mom and dad are fighting, but you still got your candy. That's literally what they did at that company. They divided the managers, screwed it all up. And to be honest with you, I don't think this policy is going to work very well, even though it's a great idea. We all know our places, right? This owner's a dreamer. He's always been a dreamer. He dreams up great ideas, hence why he's in the position he's in. But his execution was lacking. So what I want to talk to you guys about, because after I sat down and tried my best to patch and put a Band-Aid on this problem, I came up with 3 things. So I said, hey, let's keep it simple. Here are the 3 things that I really want you to work on. Just want to take a moment to talk about SquareCoil here. SquareCoil has been powering the signage industry since 2011, and we're only growing bigger and better and stronger every single day. Some of the latest updates have just made my life a lot easier. I'm sure it's going to make your life a lot easier. So if you haven't checked us out, go ahead and get on our website, squarecoil.com. Take a look. And if you have an outdated key, an old software program that's going to be closing its doors this year, definitely take a look at us because we can make that transition real simple for you. Take a look at squarecoil.com. The first one is engagement of management. All of the people are going to carry out your orders, all your middle managers, regardless of what their title is, they need to be on the same page as you. So you need to have a meeting prior to the company-wide meeting, the day the policy is infected, the day the policy goes launched. You need to have a couple, 2 to 3 meetings prior to that date. And that first one better be with your middle manager and say, this is the policy I would like to enact. What are your thought processes on this policy, and where do you think this is going to work and or hinder the company? You need to get feedback from your employees and from your middle managers if you have any hopes of having a policy stick. The reason why is because if they don't believe in it, they're not going to do it. They might do it to a point, but as soon as they can poke holes in it, they're not moving forward with your new policy. So you have to get the middle managers on the same page as you. That's not just it. In that initial meeting, ask questions. I'm thinking about this. Make it an open-ended roundtable discussion so they can sit there and give their feedback. Are you on the day-to-day floor seeing the grind of your sign company every single day? Probably not. You're probably as an owner level trying to move mountains. You're trying to build a whole new website while making the install calendar work, while trying to get payroll done, while trying this. And you have all these extracurricular activities and you're not in the day-to-day grind. Because you're not in that day-to-day grind, you might miss something that they're going to see. So don't shove your ideas down their throats. Have it be a roundtable discussion. Ask them. If they have a good idea that's not what your thought process was, that's okay. Fall back. Rewrite your policy. They have a really good idea that you see is going to make more money than the idea you had. I would rather stop, readjust, and then launch again and see what happens. So number one is getting your management team on board and making sure it's there. Let's say on the first try, they're all on board. They love the new policy. Everything's going to work out. How are you going to make sure that all your middle managers act like a one-headed beast? Because we always had a multi-headed beast where they think, oh, he meant start it tomorrow. I thought he meant start it next week. Oh, I thought he meant, and in the next month or so, slowly evolve it into the process. Now, if you guys are a multi-headed beast, you're going to have a real big problem here. So we have to make sure that each one of the people are going to invoke and affect the policy the same exact way. So now you got to have a secondary conversation. How are you going to launch this policy? How are you going to launch this policy? What do you guys think is the best way? You need to have your team talk about that and collaborate on how your employees are going to receive this new policy and how they're going to use it, make it for the positive, make it a winning policy where people want to stick with it. So getting your management team on board was a big one. It was obviously the biggest one in my mind because if that had happened here, you would have had a lot more buy-in. By the way, since the owner, the dreamer, launches to everybody at the same time, what happened was the employees went right to the owner. They skipped all the middle managers because they're like, you're the only one with the answers. I'm going to come right to you. And basically all of his hierarchy, all of his org chart was just thrown out the window. He didn't have it. It was just him versus everybody else. And that was a bad place to be as well. Number 2, clear communication of the policy. Explain it in great detail. Pretend that you're talking to third graders and explain every little piece of it on why this is here, the history of it, why we're here, and why this is going to be better in the future. The more you explain, the more people are going to get on board. If I were to come up to you and say, hey, we're going out Friday night, what is your very first question? Where are we going? You have questions. I didn't explain it very well. I just put a date and a pin and a time frame. I said Friday night. I didn't say at 7 o'clock or anything else. I just put this, rough round pin in your schedule and say, hey, we're going out Friday night. You have questions. But if I explained, we're going to Born and Raised at 5 o'clock on Friday. This is what we want to do. This is where we're going to go for dinner. We're going to go for drinks afterwards. And I explain all that. You go, now I understand. Yep, I'll be ready by 4:30 so we can make the drive down there and have reservations at 5. You have a better understanding. So when you invoke a policy, more information is better, more words is better. You definitely want to go the distance on that one. This guy, he did actually explain it very well towards the end. Once he got, peppered with questions, he realized what his error was. He pivoted and he explained it very well, but the damage had been done. So explain yourself very, very well. Number 3, are you going to do it? Are you going to follow your own policy? Because if you're going to follow the do as I say, not as I do, it's never going to work. You're going to be in the same boat a couple of years from now. You're going to have to follow through with it. You're going to have to do it, and you're going to have to do it very obtusely so everybody can see. Reinforce the policy multiple different times. Put a flyer out. Talk about it again. Lead and talk about it while you're doing it. If it's a time card thing, you want the time cards entered in your basket, say, hey, time cards come in this basket right over here, and set down a time card right in the basket. The people learn visually. They learn by audio. There's a bunch of different ways that people are going to receive the information and finally going to click. So you're going to have repetition, and you're going to repeat time and time again. Discuss that policy in a positive manner. Please, for the love of God, don't say, I know this sucks, but we got to do it. Right there, you might as well just stopped and walked away. Positive. This is going to save us time. This is going to be better for this one. We're going to have better reporting because of this. Positively keep pushing that policy of what you're going to have. It's going to be a better idea. I know this takes time. I know this takes effort. And I know we do not have any time. But you're trying to affect change for the positive, right? You're trying to help that bottom line. You're trying to get more money for your employees. All of those things take time and effort. That doesn't happen overnight. So you're going to have a positive push, and you're going to have to say it a lot, and you're going to have that repetition happen for 3 to 4 weeks before it's really going to take. If you're going to say it twice and come back 2 weeks later and see how it's doing, you're going to have the same shop. It's going to hurt. Those 3 things work very, very well for launching a new policy. If I had, in hindsight, I wish I had said stop and not taken the wooden nickels and really asked the questions before I'd gone up there. Would have saved him a lot of time, effort, headache. But it is what it is. We fell back, we punted, we made it work. But the one thing that I will say that this guy's really, really good at, that's why I like working with him, is he knows how to pivot. He's going to launch the policy. He's going to stay on it for 3 to 4 weeks. And now 3 or 4 weeks, we're going to have a secondary phone call and say, how does the company look now? Is it doing better? Is it we're achieving what we want? If the needle's moving in the positive direction, great. If the needle didn't move at all, we're going to have to pivot. But the good news is just because you thought it up once and you put it into action does not mean that's how it has to stay for the rest of time. There's always a change. Talk to you guys next week.